Hello! In this video, I'm gonna be reading and talking about throughout and at the end the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think a bunch of folks have read it already. 1 million copies sold. Good for him. So stick around. I will be sharing quick summaries of what I'm reading because I'm really just trying to capture the important ideas I find within the book for myself, so I can review it later without having to reread. So I'll see you in this chair with this lighting at the end. But yeah, let's get to reading. It is Monday morning and I'm gonna try and read all of this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Today I'm starting page 82. I think it's like 100 pages left ish, and it is a book about habits. And basically I'm gonna film this because I would like to remember more accurately the books I read. So even if I don't post this online, hopefully it's still valuable for me to have some clips to pull together about these books that I'm reading, so I can remember them better by just watching a quick video of my summary. So what I will do now is summarize what I have read. And then what I have read, he differentiates, his approach to habits by talking about how instead of focusing on motivation, he focuses, in his own actions and in what he's recommending for others, he's focusing on thinking about habits, the habits of the person you want to be or you want to become, and that is going to be more effective than motivation. That is maybe not as effective because emotions vary from day to day. He also breaks it down into the cycles of habits. Like there's a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. And that's how most habits should be formed. And yeah, I'm just starting it, so we'll see what else I get out of this. But my goal is to build habits around my writing and build habits around going outside to do walking, which is my preferred form of movement, and that makes me feel good. I'll come back in maybe 40 more pages. We'll see. If anything important comes up, I'll film, and then if not, I'll come back to the halfway point and then I'll summarize at the end. I'll be real, I don't trust my ability to summarize large chunks of this book, so I'll do a chapter summary of what I've just read. And in this chapter he talks about the environment as a cue to set you up for good habits or the habits you want. And part of the environment argument he's putting forth is if you see things at eye level that are related to your habit, that will help set you up to remember to do it. So if you want to take your vitamins, you should put them next to a place that you see every morning, or at night. If you want to play guitar, it should be right in front of you. So maybe in my case it's I'd like to do more yoga, so maybe the mat shouldn't be hidden in a corner behind something. It should be maybe I could hang it up there, and have it always be at eye level. Other environmental stuff that he mentions is to have areas of a room or rooms themselves be for specific actions that you'd like to be part of your daily habits. And he mentions his office room is his space for work. Before he didn't have an office, he has struggled because his couch was a place where he did work, but he also would like to relax, and he couldn't put that line. My struggle is I have a small apartment, and he says fair enough, if you have a small space you can maybe divide it by the chairs for this, the desk is for this, the tables for eating. We have a very small space, so I think that my bed can't just be for sleeping, it has to be for more. So bed is for relaxing, and obviously reading is the most comfortable on a bed. If you're a reader, you may agree with me, you may not, I don't know. I like to journal in my bed, and then I use my phone before I go to sleep. I do Duolingo and scrolling on TikTok, so I could probably rethink that. And my desk is for work, and I would like it really to be for writing, but the desk is for some crafting as well. So yeah, I have to think through the environment stuff that he's mentioning, but it's basically just creating cues. Also, I forgot to mention in my last part of the summary of whatever, something I found helpful in his argument is the cue, I think he calls it habit stalking. He introduces something called habit stacking, and so you stack habits next to things you already do where it makes sense. And that's interesting because there's a lot of habits we all already have that we just do every morning or we do every night. So adding something right after where it makes sense or right before, that could be cool. Okay, on to chapter 7, the secret of self-control. It's a little bit later now. I'm gonna pause on continuing to read. Gonna finish my coffee. Not a big coffee drinker, and this is water. But I'm gonna wash some dishes, do some other stuff. But let me just summarize where I left off. Towards the middle of the book, and I think last I summarized, I was talking about, girl, I can't even, I really need these videos because I can't even remember what I was saying last time I talked to this camera. Maybe, no, I think I was probably about to read chapter 7, correct? So we talked about environment, and then we talked about self-control, and it was basically the idea of self-control being being sort of the attribute necessary to maintain a habit. That is something he's trying to dispel, and is trying to instead present that habits, people who are really successful at continuing habits that they want to, that they like, they simply make their environment, make the good cues visible, and then make the bad ones invisible. So it doesn't take a lot of self-control when that isn't, the cues for those other habits are not around. And he uses examples of like drug addiction, and how, you know, when you completely remove some cues, like some soldiers experienced once they got back home from war, they would just not have visual cues or visual or sound or those cues that led them towards drug addiction. So those habits were actually broken because of that. So that's sort of what that part of the book ends on, which is cues, or make it, what is it? Make it obvious / make it invisible. So make the good habits obvious, or the good cues obvious, and then make the bad cues invisible. Okay, back. So I was summarizing that that's the end of the first part of the book, and now we move on to the second part, which is the second law. I believe there are 4 laws, of change, to create good habits and to break bad habits. And the second law is to make it attractive, and I just read the first chapter in that section, which discussed, I guess, something I'm kind of familiar with, which is like pairing, you know, incentives that are already irresistible, or things you want, with things you need to do. So, you know how there's TVs in the gym, where you can be walking or running, and you can be watching Real Housewives, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think I've partaken in that, but it's interesting to think about being more, about planning that out a little bit more, instead of having happy accidents happen. So I'm gonna read a little bit more about making habits attractive, and then I'll check back. And actually I might go do some other things right now, but hopefully I feel like I can get through basically this whole book, at least by tonight, especially because at the end it's a lot of notes. So really, yeah, I'm about halfway. It's 260 pages. And this is helpful because, as you can see, I can't remember things. All right, so it's been a little bit of a busy morning, and now it's afternoon, the next day, and I'm gonna get to reading a little bit. I have like an hour or 2 to read, so I want to, before I start doing that, just to also get in the mindset and be able to focus, I want to recap what I haven't recapped which I believe I talked about self-control. I believe I talked about making habits irresistible. Did I? So I'll start. I got to chapter 14 halfway through, and basically what I've been reading about is, part of it was like culture matters. So like what is positively enforced by all different levels of your community, so like wider community, your family, your friends, that can have like positive and I guess negative effects. Talked about some chess folks as an example of that. Then why don't I remember this? Oh, then it was also like mindset. So part of making a habit attractive is to, you know, talk to yourself or talk about these habits in both positive and negative lights, if you would like to make it unattractive or bad habits you're trying to break. So like for smoking, I believe it was, there was a Turkish friend that read a book that helped him quit smoking, and the book was basically just a guy like shaming or shitting on smokers and saying smoking is terrible, it's disgusting, you actually don't really like it. And then the opposite can be true, where you can make the habits you want feel attractive and feel like you're doing something good, by just changing the language you use. So like, and I've tried doing this, it kind of works, where I feel nervous a lot of the time before something big, but instead of identifying the feeling as nerves, identifying it as excitement, which is basically just renaming. Then the third law, I started going into the third law, which is make it easy. And make it easy was like start small in terms of time, but if you're consistent in the actions you do over time, even if if you're not dedicating like 3 hours to something, if you're dedicating even just 2 minutes, that makes it easy. That also helps just build the habit of doing it, and then you can add more. Then there was a section on effort. I think you got a little bit carried away in this section, I'll be real. There was stuff that I wouldn't consider helpful for me. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I guess another bit about sort of the environment, and priming the environment so that it's not, your habit doesn't take a lot of effort for habits that, yeah, that part. I feel like that's a little repetitive. Then how to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule, and that's where he introduces like 2 minutes and then build up. Just make sure you're doing it on consistent basis, and that is just shaping your habit to the level you want it, but you're not going to start at that level. And I'm going to go into chapter 14. I'll be real, there's nuggets there that I'm interested in. There's also some repetition here that is dragging the book a little bit. So I've got this much left, and I'll check back in once I feel like there's so much information that I have to share, that I won't remember to share if I don't share. Girl, I don't know what I just said. Bye. Hello, I am once again here to talk about Atomic Habits. This time I have finished the book. This is the day after the last clip you saw, so I got it through it like in 3 days with busy life in between. So I would say a pretty quick read, and I think I already started saying this, so let me just get into my thoughts about the book. It is pretty repetitive, with some ideas that it's putting forward. I would say specifically the thoughts about the environment and about how to structure environment for better habits. I think that probably could have been one chapter of a lot of good ideas, but it felt like it kept coming back to that. But generally, I would recommend this book, and I think the author, James Clear, does a really good job of organizing a lot of interesting ideas from different studies, different disciplines related to habits. Give me a minute. Alright, so for the sake of this summary that I'm trying to create, for the sake of the summary I'm trying to create through this video, I'm gonna go through all the 4 laws of how to create good habits, and then the opposite corresponding how to break bad habit 4 laws as well. And then part of the end of that section of Make It Easy is to find ways to automate habits, or like to use automation but from technology or other services in our world to make your habits easier. So as an example, someone that needed to go to the gym every week or wanted to, decided that the easiest way for them to get to the gym was to walk right out of their door and hail a cab. Now, do we have money to be doing that? No, but that's just an example of like, there are things in our communities that make certain habits or actions simpler, and to find ways to like make that work for us. Our phones can make, you know, certain habits simpler, or they can actually complicate it because of the existing habits we currently have with checking our phone too often. So that's a conversation he starts there. Then we go into our 4th law, which is make it satisfying, and this is what I'm looking at, by the way. He will create little charts at the end of each law, and he'll just catch you up on where we're at, with 1-sentence descriptions that actually are a little vague and don't really capture everything you need to know. So I wouldn't say that this is this is enough, but it is a good reminder once you actually read the book. So make it satisfying is the 4th law, 4th and final. So that is creating that positive reinforcement, rewarding yourself when you complete a habit in a way that is aligned with the kind of person you want to be, and that doesn't negate the habit or the benefit from the habit. So for example, if you are looking to go into a calorie deficit with working out, then maybe rewarding yourself with something that would not be conducive to a calorie deficit is not the answer, but maybe you can do a full body massage, or like a facial or something like that, something that is aligned with you wanting to take care of your body. And at the end of all this, what I'm gonna have to think through is how I can make these pieces of advice work for the habit I'm trying to build, or the habits I'm trying to build, which is what sort of distracts me as I'm sharing the summary, because I'm thinking about how that might be applicable to my habit, or the main habit I'm trying to figure out, which is writing and introducing writing in a more permanent way into my life. So make it satisfying. Another part of make it satisfying is avoiding a bad habit. A lot of the time may mean not doing something, so doing nothing. So he talks about how to make doing nothing an enjoyable experience. So by doing nothing, we may not feel the positive reinforcement because we're doing nothing. So finding ways to track your behaviors, and even just the tracking of it, the checking off of it in a consistent basis, can help you feel good about not doing something. Feel a little spark of you know, encouragement or motivation. So another part of make it satisfying is habit tracker that I already started talking on. He talks in depth about it, and talks about the idea of don't break the chain, and if you break the chain, and this is the last part of make it satisfying, never miss twice. So if you because life gets in the way, or because of any circumstance, you break a habit, don't try to make sure you don't miss twice, that you get right back on, and you make sure you're tracking yourself immediately and keeping yourself accountable. In terms of bad habits, I think it kind of like already goes into it, what I've talked about in terms of like rewarding yourself when you do nothing. Of course, rewarding yourself when you do something by tracking it. But let's see if there's anything I missed. So I would say for the opposite of make it easy, make it difficult, he talks about making your bad habit take a lot of time, or complicating, creating friction around it. So say you play too many video games, you're spending too much time on it, what you could do is you could unplug the console after you play, and that will make it just a bit more inconvenient the next time you want to play it, so you'll think about it a little bit more. And that's like just using the natural laziness in all of us, but for the benefit of the habit you're trying to break. And if you're really extreme, he mentions this quite a few times, if you're really extreme in wanting to break habits around technology, he says unplugging devices and moving them to another room. So unplugging your TV, he mentions, and moving it to another room. Also leaving your phone in another room is a piece of advice he gives. And another way to make it difficult is to use a commitment device. So finding ways to restrict, or like, there are a lot of apps that came to mind when I was thinking about apps that restrict what you can use for a certain amount of time. The iPhone comes now with that timer on social media that you can add, or really on any app, I think. The last inversion of the 4 laws is making it unsatisfying. So by making it unsatisfying, one of the first thing he mentions is involve another person to make you accountable towards breaking bad habits, and also I guess towards building good habits. But breaking bad habits, and if you slip, then it's not only unattractive and unsatisfying that you missed a day on what you're trying to accomplish, but you're also disappointing another person, and that's the whole idea there. And then create a habit contract is yeah, he ends on that, which I think is a weak one to end on because I'm not into it. You can literally create a contract, and that may make it psychologically more painful for you to go back on something. He recommends using it and shares a story about someone literally using a contract. But another kind of contract could be, for example, I do NaNoWriMo, and that is a commitment I'm making online with a community that I am gonna write however many words, 50k words in a month, and that is a kind of contract. So if you want to use that idea and interpret it yourself, you can do that. I am now going to be thinking about how I can use these ideas to make sure I'm writing consistently, because I do, and he does talk about this in like making it satisfying, or actually maybe it's like in the extra section. There's a section on extra bits. What's it called? It's not extra bits. It's like, there's a section about how you should be going along. There's a section on how you should be looking to create habits that align with your personality and with, he mentions genetics, but by that he means like in the sports sense of, if you're very tall, certain sports are going to be easier for you, certain sports are going to be easier for you and more enjoyable because they're rewarding. So he mentions that go for things that you actually enjoy, that actually reward you when you're doing them, that like drive you to that state of focus and flow. So for me, that would be writing, and that is what is on my mind. I will see you next time when I guess I could do this for fiction books, but I think what is actually helpful for me is to do it for non-fiction as I'm reading, like as a reading blog. And then for fiction books, which I'm gonna read one right here, got it prepped, ready to go. I'll be real, checking in throughout adds a little bit of stress to the experience of reading, but I know ultimately, like at least for these non-fiction books, it's gonna be rewarding, because at the end I can rewatch the video and remember certain ideas. So I think for these fiction books, I might just do a summary at the end of what I remember the most right as I end it, right as I finish reading it, and that should be enough. And maybe if I do any vlogging bits as I read it, it won't be like a retelling of what's going on, but more of a, whoa, this just happened and I need to process it by talking out loud. We'll see. Okay. See ya. Okay. Yes.